Is Africa begging to be recolonized again by the French government? Something is happening in Kenya, and this is troubling for many Pan-Africanists who believe that the Western nations ought to stay clear of African domestic policy, that Africa must set its policy without foreign interference and without any contribution from the Western world. There is an African Forward Summit being organized in Nairobi, Kenya by the President of Kenya, Dr. William Samuel Ruto. Ruto is organizing this conference to bring African presidents to discuss on the issues affecting Africa, domestic issues affecting Africa, and how they can come together as a continent to address some of the pertinent problems that Africa is facing. The problems that Africa is facing stem from 1, trade, 2, tourism, 3, infrastructure, 4, the aspect of insecurity, especially in some key states like the Sahel, like also in some parts of Central Africa and East Africa, the conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and also to tackle the issue of immigration, which many Africans are dying on a regular basis at the Mediterranean. Now, the invitation of the French president is not resounding in the minds of Pan-Africanists who believe that the French president attending this African Forward Summit is compromisable and is coming to compromise the same foundation that these presidents of Africa are in Nairobi to tackle. That inviting Macron to be part and parcel of the African Forward Summit is not just a slap to the face, but it is also a question that they are going against the same foundation or the same principle under which a summit is being organized. The reason is simple. The French government has a terrible policy in Africa that many Africans are not happy with, owing to their dirty past with the way in which the French government treated some of their colonies in Africa. Until date, many are still not happy and want the French to outrightly leave their continent in terms of not being able to influence their domestic policy. Looking at what happened in Senegal, looking at what happened in Algeria, looking at the African troops who died while fighting for France, looking at the influence that the French is having in terms of the CFA, looking at the exploitation of African resources without the French government being able to give a financial contribution commensurate to what they are actually exploiting in Africa as resources, is why many Pan-Africans don't want France to directly affect or influence their domestic policy. Now, President Emmanuel Macron is in Kenya to discuss and to attend a meeting that Africans have sat to look into their problem. How then are they going to look into this problem without the main person who is the problem, or seen by many Africans as the problem, taking part in a meeting? This, to many, is a hypocrisy that African leaders must learn to accept the reality that they are not supposed to go to the colonizers, but rather the colonizers is supposed to respect their founding principle. How do you solve these problems? The typical example is what is happening in the Sahel region. The Sahel region, the Russian government had accused the French government of sponsoring terrorism. Even the president of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré, last June 2025 came out to say that the French government is responsible for the terrorism in the Sahel region. Not just him, also the president of Niger, Abdourahmane Tiani. Abdourahmane Tiani made it clear in one of his recent interviews that c'est le petit stupide Macron qui nous a ouvert les yeux du président au Sahel. And he added that the French government is responsible for the insecurity which is taking place in the Sahel state. The president of Mali, Assimi Goïta, also made similar claim, and there have been several attempted coups d'etats in the Sahel region, and Russian intelligence, with credible evidence from the Russian intelligence, proved that the French government is responsible for sponsoring some of these coups and some of the issues that is occurring in Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, part of Nigeria, which directly affect the northern part of Cameroon, and that has claimed the lives of a lot of people. Now, inviting Emmanuel Macron in this conference to attend the African Forward Summit, what is the reason? Why Macron? And another issue is, can the European Union sit and say European Union Summit, a way forward, and invite African leaders to come and attend their own issue? The answer is typically no, except many of these Africans who vote for the fact that Emmanuel Macron be invited are having skeleton in their cupboard. The truth here is, some Pan-Africans have had an understanding as to why French government is influencing domestic policy, because they see some of the African leaders as being vicious dictators whom will not want to go and will decide to compromise with the French government to benefit from the protection of the French government in case their people want to react, and also to siphon money as they enjoy from the protection of the French government. If that is not the case, how will you understand the invitation of President Emmanuel Macron into an all-African summit, African Forward 2026? African Forward 2026. You are inviting the French president to be part of that meeting with an open arms. Then there is a problem. There is a problem because you cannot be talking about Pan-Africanism. You cannot be talking about oneness of Africa. Whereas the main problem that Africa is still facing is the unbearing pressure and the compromise by Western nations. The influence of Western nations on domestic policies of Africa. That is the major problem. And that is why the Sahel nations say they want to stop this influence. And this is not resonating well. And instead of the rest of the nations to align with the Sahel nation, they are instead going to align with the colonizers. It is not strange. And that is why many are asking the 2.0 France, or what could be the reason why the French president is invited into an Africa Way Forward Summit.